Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you all joining today for this year in review from roughly last year to this year right now. And I'm Jim Morentz, the Executive Director of the XchangeCore community. And we have a lot to go through, but I'm going to roll right through it and give you both a look at some of the projects that were done over the last year and reported on, as well as provide an update for them as well. And we begin right around this time last year with the Hurricane Joaquin rainfall response in South Carolina that was presented by Phil Armegeddon of Earth Technology Integration. And you'll recall there that they used XchangeCore to link together more than 30 different organizations across the state of South Carolina, all the counties and multiple agencies. And on the slide here, taken right from the webinar report, you see a number of the different organizations that are involved. And this first one was a National Guard status, that being a National Guard being one of the lead agencies with emergency management. They integrate mission requests that come from a lot of different organizations, federal, state, and local. Those mission requests come in, they're logged into this version of WebEOC that they have adapted significantly. And those missions then get turned into assignments. And those assignments are then available on through XchangeCore to other applications. In this case, it is Google Earth, but all of the different applications that you will see throughout this summary of the year could be connected to XchangeCore and could get this same information. So we had mission requests, we had mission assignments, and then you have National Guard units that go out to fulfill those missions. And here's a combination of the Google Earth over on the, this is ArcGIS Flex Viewer. I'm looking at ArcGIS information on the right-hand side, and then a custom insert that has been developed on the left-hand side that is actually reading data off of WebEOC, putting it into this new format and integrating it with the ArcGIS. And just for a typical emergency management problem, shelter status, each one of the shelters have a number of closed, open, renovation, standby status that you see in the color-coded pop-up there on shelter status. And this is a normal day in the life, and all those shelters are out there, and none of them are engaged in any specific activity immediately prior to the earthquake. This then is the emergency management log. If you've been familiar with WebEOC, you understand its format. This again is taking the information out of WebEOC through XchangeCore, putting into this new user interface that South Carolina itself designed, and provided that information out, again, connected to Google Earth or any of the other applications. So quick look at what we heard and learned about roughly a year ago and what's happened since then. Well, the Earth Technology Integration team was awarded a 5-year contract to further implement Palmetto Vision, which is what the South Carolina Emergency Management Agency calls their common operating picture. The group also won a contract to do exactly the same thing with the Virginia National Guard, creating that common operating picture. And they've been invited to participate in a pilot with the National Guard Bureau that will use XchangeCore to link South Carolina Emergency Management Division and the National Guard to the National Guard Bureau's Joint Information Exchange environment. And in that mix is the military equivalent of XchangeCore, which is Keystone, which is simply XchangeCore, which has been through a version of XchangeCore that has been through the military certification to be able to operate on the .mil environment. And this is going to be one of the first instances where civilian information will get through XchangeCore connected to Keystone that will bridge the gap across each one of what we would call that divide that exists between military and civilian organizations. So that was what happened roughly a year ago, and provides you a little bit of an update of where all that has been, as well as the capabilities provided. So in January, we then had the Norway's Center for Integrated Emergency Management and XchangeCore Innovation speech done by Dr. Radiante of University of Agder. This was part of something called Armegeddon, which is a huge European-wide data harvesting event or set of activities targeted at extreme weather events, but it really is emergency management. A lot of attention to coastal flooding and issues like that as a result. But the overall look at that across Europe, starting at the bottom, there's a immediate targeted response about something that is happening. That results in European-wide real-time data harvesting, which bubbles up specific information about risk and response communications, the cyber technology, and the sensing information, all of which come together in the middle, go through a couple of processes. They're ubiquitous processes, and the cognitive computing, I would call that equivalent to what we talked about in XchangeCore as the data orchestration. They're creating a number of different algorithms that may help or will help that to be significantly better. And then the information gets divided into two different components. Left-hand side, response analytics, and the right-hand side, the hazard analytics. And in each of those cases, XchangeCore is the way that those sets of information will then be pushed out to all the recipients. So really this then, as you've seen in some of our previous cases, is a cycle. So that response analytics and hazard analytics will cycle back, and it becomes part of the data harvesting down in the middle there to go back and further enrich the information. The collaboration platform that the university developed has XchangeCore in multiple locations, being able to go out and touch large big data down at the bottom, mobile data elements on the other extremes, be able to pull information from the picture on the upper right-hand side, the front seat of the fire truck, basically, those on-scene people, in the middle to the command center, and at the upper reaches to be able to look at it as European-wide situational awareness. Where they were when they reported was at the technology testing and training phase on, again, it's a public-private partnership, and multiple exercises. I was in Norway for that exercise on the left-hand side with multiple different agencies in Red Cross and other support organizations. So we have the number of opportunities that to be able to bring XchangeCore information into the different levels of organization that exist. Their collaboration platform that existed then and has been expanded a little bit has police, emergency management, the fire stations there, and then the university security folks, all of whom are communicating on XchangeCore. An update on that one, they've done continued implementation of their tools and technologies because they're working in remote sensing and drones and, I mean, just a wonderful array of technologies. All of them they're bringing in through XchangeCore. They've got a number of team members that have been participating in additional European-wide implementations, and the hope is that they are able to show the benefits of XchangeCore and then to get those added into other European programs. And then finally, they have asked us to come and speak at a forum in Brussels in a couple of months to learn more about XchangeCore. So that program is doing a nice job of continuing to grow. And in February, we heard about healthcare, which is really the first healthcare-focused XchangeCore implementation in Southern California. And it brought together the Hospital Association in Southern California that has a piece of technology called ReadyNet, and they gather information from all the different medical components in hospitals and paramedics and clinics. And the idea is to really create that secure emergency communication system. 15 counties, 500 different organizations across Southern California, gathering a set of information that's valuable to those healthcare management needs, really. And we have the Community Clinic Association of Los Angeles County. It has 58 member clinics, 300 member and affiliated clinic sites. And those clinics are in underserved neighborhoods. These are the free clinics, the religious clinics, the ones that are associated with schools, to bring people in less fortunate neighborhoods in and provide them the health care that they need. 1.4 million patients, excuse me, a huge number of people working their way through there. Their disaster preparedness program has done training and exercises, helps each one of the clinics do planning, and turned to a technology, Spot on Response, that developed a specific application for clinics. So this is one side of the communications link that XchangeCore begins to fill. It's a mobile app, has all the clinic able to have their own branding and their information down there in the middle of the client service profile. And the eventual expectation is that this becomes a patient app that allows patients to come in and say, I'm looking for a clinic that has these capabilities. Here's one that's close. As part of that, though, people will look at clinics more often during emergencies, and as a result, being able to share the operating status out from each one of the clinics is critical. For the clinics themselves in the emergency, they need to have their floor plans and their emergency plans. So the things on the right are private to the clinic business operations. The branding and location information will eventually be available to the public, and the interface between the two is that if a clinic is open and operating and no problem, I don't need an emergency plan. But when I close or go into some sort of a special condition, the emergency plans are needed by the business side, the practitioners, and on the left-hand side, the public needs to know whether they can count on that clinic or not. ReadyNet is a different set of responsibilities. They do have status information about clinics, and they can quickly publish a survey that enables the clinics to be able to gather up information and provide it back to ReadyNet that is then shared to others. So the key is we got a little bit of overlap in status, have an overlap between the 500 clinics on the left-hand side and the 350 or so that it's grown to now of about 100 clinics. And you don't want those 100 clinics reporting in two different places. Does that sound familiar? It's every project that we've tried to do in the last half a dozen years. So clinic status coming from the hands of the clinic professionals on a mobile basis, ReadyNet a web base into XchangeCore, with the key being not only do they synchronize back and forth, but they're then shared to other organizations, out to the county WebUCs, ArcGIS Online, to 911 organizations. Where have they been? Well, Spot on Response is operational with clinic profile information updated fairly recently as their member clinics grew to more than 350 people. The Clinic Association has supported several spot-on response improvements so that mobile app component is continuing to improve. One of the things we discovered, and it's a challenge that we're still in the midst of overcoming, is that poor neighborhoods have high concentration of clinics that are free. Poor neighborhoods also have low concentration of support from wireless carriers. As a result, we're in these areas that need support most and get support least. So we're having to do some things that, and we're addressing being off of a cellular network when somebody's walking by a big building in a poor neighborhood where the cell companies are not putting up a sufficient number of towers, and they're looking for something. How are we going to be able to handle that in a mobile environment? So this has been a very interesting challenge, and one that we are, earlier today, I saw a new cut at how we can begin to replicate information and be able to overcome this. On the ReadyNet side, their connectivity has been operational, and there's an impending move from XchangeCore 1.33 to XchangeCore 2.0, and we'll be working with them to make sure that that goes smoothly. Las Vegas, speaking of 2.0, did a wonderful implementation on medical and fire information exchange. You'll recall in the 1.33 version, you have to have a physical core, physical machine to represent a core. In the 2.0 version, you can create virtual cores from a single physical machine. You virtualize that. That allows anybody on the core to share information. That allows applications in one group to share information with other groups. It allows groups to say, hey, everybody in this group, I want to exchange information with that group. And allows you to combine that and say, I've got this group talking to this group, but that one application out there, I want to bring into a sharing arrangement. So that process is one that was able to satisfy a need in Las Vegas. It's a very clear need. The Emergency Management Agency and the Fire Alarm Office that handles emergency medical responses each have different reasons for having information. With a common need to protect privacy, emergency management didn't want to ever get every person who has the flu in. They wanted relevant information to the emergency management information. And they wanted to avoid duplicating anything. The Fire Alarm Office dispatch is very, very volatile. They've got codes. They're changing codes all the time. Codes are really outside the authority of emergency management, so things just happen over in the fire side. And you wanted to be able to build this whole thing to minimize a burden on the Fire Alarm Office dispatch. So the effort was to be able to control things inside of emergency management, because they are the ones who wanted the information, while protecting sensitive information from the Fire Alarm Office. And the way that they did that was to create a virtual core that let Las Vegas Emergency Management get control over what gets shared, to provide data that could be shared in an unrestricted format to anybody that emergency management wanted to, and allow that fire office to only provide information they wanted shared, emergency management to selectively share that information to different applications. That took place integrating the TriTech dispatch that does all the fire and emergency medical service. So it has lots and lots of information. Two major applications that the Las Vegas Emergency Management Agency wanted to selectively give only the dispatches that are agreed to, and by creating virtual cores for those units, they've been able to accomplish that. So Fire Alarm Office has all the information. Only selected ones go off to WebEOC on the left side. Only selected ones go off to Spot On Response on the right-hand side. The update, their move to 2.0 was complicated. Sometimes things get complicated when you're dealing with multiple applications. Changes that Microsoft made to the .NET programming environment. There are a couple of weird little things that they either do or don't do. Team's currently diagnosing that. When that's resolved, though, and this is the point I wanted to make on this because this is an evolutionary process, that .NET example code that was used to build these exchanges will be updated and loaded up to the XchangeCore open source code repository, so nobody else who's writing .NET connectors ever has to discover this problem again and go through the diagnostics that's taking place. And that's the beauty of a community, of being able to deliver code. Somebody finds an innovation, they can add it in and everybody else benefits. Somebody solves a problem, they can add it in and everybody else benefits. All right, so in April, we took a look at FEMA's whole community and the quest for resilience and what XchangeCore can do with it. The origins of the whole communities were from then Administrator Craig Fugate, who came out of the state of Florida and local government and understands that the feds don't solve all the problems, and neither do the state, neither do the local government. That it is an entire community. And the real major improvement there was the outgrowth of the National Business Emergency Operations Center. The idea behind the whole community, to get adequate information and give it to organizations. When they do, they will be more willing to provide information about what they are doing to assist the whole community. In order to accomplish that, it has to be multi-directional information sharing, for-profit, private sector organizations, as well as government organizations, with everybody's goal being to keep the community up and running after an event. Looks something like this. Members of the community share information with private sector organizations. That has to be transparently shared to all the government organizations, which is exactly what XchangeCore was built for. Be able to provide simultaneous information, continuously accessible, and make certain that somebody isn't saying, gee, I have information about schools. Here are 3,000 of them. I want to know the 3 schools that are affected by that particular emergency. So everybody is reading off of the same sheet of music. How does that look? The whole community incident information. Responders getting the information they need. Critical infrastructure getting the information they need. Volunteers, private sector, all those being able to share through XchangeCore to get that proverbial right information at the right time to the right organization. Update on this one, the FEMA administrator went to Department of Homeland Security's Director of Science and Technology and said, let's support this. Let's support the private sector being able to do a better job of providing business status information to government agencies and support the government agencies in being able to consume that better. XchangeCore is the technical basis for that information exchange. The project will continue throughout 2017, actually a little bit into 2018, and the benefit for anyone listening is that there will be additional applications we'll be connecting through XchangeCore. As I said earlier, when that application connects, the connector code becomes available through the open source repository. So if there's application X is suddenly connecting to XchangeCore and you have application X, it costs you nothing to get the code to be able to make that exchange. Secondly, the availability of a hosted XchangeCore for organizations to borrow. Now that a single physical unit can host multiple private virtual cores, this project makes one of those available. So 10, 15, 20, we haven't really connected all those past the test stage of half a dozen of them on a virtual core. But some number of organizations can borrow an XchangeCore. And ostensibly, it's for a year, get yourself up and running, and then you'll want to move into either a hosted environment or your own environment. And then lastly, as I mentioned, everything goes into the open source code repository. So our next meeting was to announce the 2016 David Griffith Hurricane Information Initiative, which is a joint activity between XchangeCore and SABRE to focus on hurricanes as a problem area. You've probably seen this before. All those hurricanes come up the coast. Private sector operation centers, gap between government operation centers, and that gap is one in which XchangeCore fills the gap. Taking private sector information, whether it's on a mobile app, whether it's through a simple spreadsheet, or whether it's a fully automated connection as we have from Walmart and are about to get from another organization. So it's continuously available information. XchangeCore does all of its thing to transform that information from all the different formats into the NEEM compliant standardized data, and then provide that information out either in one-way flows to organizations or to things like common operating pictures, or two-way flows out to incident management software or to mobile applications. The update is that this entire thing worked, and worked extremely well through Hurricane Matthew. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, FEMA's National Business Emergency Operations Center dashboard. There has the reference and guide to how to get to SABRE. Florida's common operational picture up in the upper right-hand corner. The SABRE status map that is freely available to people. Spot on Response mobile app, Google Earth on the bottom right-hand side. And then if you're not interested in any of that, you just want to read it, you can use a web-based reader, freely available, tap into the information, and get some statistics on how many incidents and types of stores are operating or closed, and then look at the textual information about each one of them. Update on this, SABRE membership continues to grow. I encourage you to go on to sabrespace.com to see all the new organizations. And if you have not begun to participate, sign up right there. No cost, no obligation, but lots of benefit. SABRE continues to provide requirements for technical advances, and recently just completed some enhancements to the XchangeCore connector, CSV connector, for putting that information from private sector groups into XchangeCore. That's all now available on the XchangeCore open source code repository. SABRE was mobilized, as I mentioned, for Hurricane Matthew, and SABRE was invited to participate in two DHS National Infrastructure Protection Program Challenge projects, and we'll hear about them in a minute or two. So we're now into Cascadia Rising, the National Emergency Operations Center exercise, and added a couple of new folks. Idaho participating in that exercise with SABRE information, along with lots of other things that the California Earthquake Clearinghouse and other organizations have been doing. So Idaho used that information. That was a new state participating through that. The Earthquake Clearinghouse did all their different things with modeling and field reports and incidents and connectivity to all the different applications that you've seen. NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory did modeling and simulation results, and a couple of those were very, very innovative. The one up in the left-hand side is Homeland Security Infrastructure Protection data that uses information about the incident from XchangeCore to run against their analytics that use the HCIP data to return to XchangeCore the facility information that was originally identified by XchangeCore as being at risk. So there's a piece of the Puget Sound. That information from various models went through XchangeCore process and the incident or high probability losses returned from NASA JPL. Very, very cool item. And that we continue to work to help them expand so that it will be available on a daily basis for any hazard. So if I have a hazardous materials accident and that shows up in XchangeCore, without even thinking about it, the HSIP data about schools, hospitals, nursing homes, and whatever else you want just shows up back through XchangeCore so that you are able to eliminate the need to go out and discover information. Rather, it is pushed to you through XchangeCore and the NASA JPL modeling. Update on that, the exercise after action report for Cascadia Rising cited XchangeCore as enabling effective information exchange. Got some excellent lessons learned that led to technology interoperability project improvements to the ArcGIS Online connector to XchangeCore. So some very positive benefits, and if you haven't already figured it out, that's available for you free to use on your own ArcGIS Online, as well as the code being available for you to extend it in the code repository. So then in July we talked about 3 new projects that were built to use and extend XchangeCore. Again, these illustrate benefits. First one is the Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resiliency submitted a risk-based cross-sector decision-making for critical infrastructure security and resilience, the RCISR toolbox. XchangeCore is part of that. Defense Industrial Base Information Sharing and Analysis Center looked at how to do a better job of two-way location-based information sharing and use XchangeCore for that. And the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, funded through the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute and the California Earthquake Clearinghouse, XchangeCore Geospatial Extensions. So let's start out with the Bay Area project. Had a couple of specific outcomes, closely integrated, customizable products to help risk-based decision-making. Provide utilities, specifically local governments and other interdependent infrastructure, with the ability to assess and quantify risks, prioritize and allocate those resources, and be able to, in the future, choose mitigation options. Well, how do you get all that varied information together? Well, stakeholder-based risk management process is the beginning of it, but then how are you going to move the information? Second bullet, a cross-sector information sharing system that's based on the XchangeCore and Sabre model for being able to share data, create distribution procedures, create a system membership, and deliver real product out through the system. Looks a lot like the other one that you saw earlier because the process is the same. You don't have to invent a new process, and that's the key thing, because you do anything that you want to on the left-hand side, anything unique that you want to, but it results in common data. When that common data gets exposed, it moves in exactly the same kind of process out to people on the right-hand side who have their own brilliant, unique ways of using the information, but that information is common operational data. So what's key is that common operational data being able to be moved through the middle that allows and encourages uniqueness on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, the private sector side, and those support organizations and government agencies. Defense Industrial Base ISAC. Problem there is that critical infrastructure protection focus has been physical and cyber assets, but people really mean continuity and recovery. So securing these employees, understanding where they are, protecting in particular, the secure and cleared human resource population that supports the defense industrial base is the goal of this project. And there are 3 different components to it. The defense industrial base operates a virtual watch center. They collect information about threats and incidents, they assess them, and then they distribute them to the defense industrial base companies. Traditional process can be done by email. But how do we make it better? Well, you make it better by giving a role to that member company that receives the information and further is able to add to it, pushing information back to XchangeCore to understand that intersection between threat and their assets, and then to provide targeted messages to their employees that will enable those employees to protect themselves, protect their families, and return to work more quickly. Third component of that are the company employees themselves, who now have a mobile app. That mobile app allows them to receive a private channel of instructions from their company, as well as the open channel of situational awareness, threat alerts, warnings that are provided by the DIB ISAC Virtual Center. So you provide the employee with a better job or better information about what's going to happen to them, specific instructions from the company. And what do you get back? Remember all the way back there in the thing about the whole community? It says if you give organizations information, they'll be happy to give information back. Well, if I'm giving this information to my employees, what do I get back? Well, I'm going to get my employees easily through the mobile app, reporting their status, their ability to perform their job, whether they have any special needs, and then anything else that would affect the corporate continuity of operations. That's going to help the company do a better job of planning their return to business. But also, all that information, the pictures and videos and everything else, also become available to government. So I have suddenly gathered tens, hundreds, thousands of human sensors from these companies who now become much more trusted information than mining Twitter or anything else like that, because these people understand the value of the information that they're providing. And they're providing it for a purpose, to inform. So this is a very exciting project that we'll be reporting on, I'm sure, again next year at some point. National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, XchangeCore Geospatial Activities. Out of exercises and some real events, it became quite clear that there were some things that can be done better in providing information from GIS to the field data collectors, which is what the clearinghouse focuses on, as well as using the information from the field back into GIS. So the ArcGIS Online feature to exchange to other applications that was done a couple of years ago, paid for by the California Office of Emergency Services. The clearinghouse has kept it going, and it provides a way to use all that wonderful GIS data and highlight it in a number of different ways and push it out for viewing in all these other different applications. At the same time, it takes that static data and turns it into dynamic transactional details by going to that place where there was a school that came out of my GIS, having somebody observe that school, give me information back, show me a picture of the school, give me voice narration or videos or whatever it is, so that that static information that says there's a school here now becomes valuable resource information for emergency responders, either by saying no problems or look at the condition of this school. Update on all three of those projects. The Bay Area and DIB ISAC challenge projects were briefed on Capitol Hill. The Bay Area group has conducted stakeholder workshops to identify requirements, and information exchange workshop will be taking place in February. The ISAC has installed a version 1, has received good marks and good requirements coming from the stakeholders. The ISAC also has actually done a couple of employee accountability tests. So one of them, lots of them in the Huntsville area where they're located, but one of them actually in Honduras, where there's a private sector mission to Honduras. And the person was tracked, reporting, and teaching some lessons about using in very low bandwidth areas like Honduras. The clearinghouse improvement in the XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online for lines and polygons is nearly completed. will be delivered at the end of the month, just in its testing period now. And the XchangeCore output of Esri JSON and GeoJSON, which makes it more readily consumable by and manipulated once it gets in there by GIS, has been completed and is available for installation. All right, so now we're moving up to the Queensland Australia that participated with it. Floods, and I see I'm going to have to start rocking and rolling since we're only halfway through the year. Floods. The use case in Queensland was state, district, local, fire. All of them have different systems, 3 different kinds of systems. All of them making requests and trying to get responses out there. No visibility to all these requests. They came in by phone, they came in by emails. So they created the information exchange platform to connect all these things and really move information in the ways that we've been talking about in order to improve situational awareness. They defined a schema saying this is the data we want to move. They then selected XchangeCore usage to create the information and pass the information back and forth. They did a very important JSON REST layer. And there's the public endpoint that they have connected into XchangeCore, and that is available on the open source repository. Creating something that looked like this. You got usage XchangeCore, and they started when it was still usage 3 years ago. And they have a set of cores so that, because as you'll learn in a minute, this has to be high availability and very, very scalable. They then wrap that in a number of connectors, the adapters that we've been talking about, and then you have all of the external services that connect to people or notify applications and authorize people to be able to have access to that system. Looks a little bit like this. Won't spend any time on it except to note that the XchangeCore usage capability is bottom layer. Everything comes through XchangeCore. What did it do? Well, it ended up creating a network that transforms all the proprietary data into industry standards, presents the information in XchangeCore, consumes notifications from XchangeCore, filters those notifications so that it only sends information to those people who are authorized to see the information. They do something even more than anybody else that I've seen. They actually sanitize the information. They will say, okay, we have a second layer of rules that say you can get the information they've provided, but in fact, we're going to restrict a little bit more of this information and giving you even less. Update. They went through a tropical cyclone, had a whole bunch of RFAs, which I'm forgetting right now what those are. There's significant local communications damage, and as a result, if they had been requests for assistance, they had been relying on those requests for assistance by email or phone, it wouldn't have gotten through. But using the network with XchangeCore at the backbone, they were able to see those requests. Last year wasn't much of a year to test this out any further, but they already had their first tropical cyclone formed a couple months ago. So this has the potential for being a more significant year. Okay, then in September we looked at some interoperability use cases. I'm going to fly through these because they're on the YouTube channel, but want to just highlight them because there are a couple of updates that I want to provide to them. Want to be able to take information from a CAD, put it into a crisis information system based on that, what type, that category incident type. And instead of having to do that in multiple cores now, You actually have the virtual cores that allow me to go in and filter through the what, and the Las Vegas is a really good example of this, so I won't stick around on it anymore. Second one is you've got this idea of the agreements that exist in there. And in the 2.0 core, there are a couple of different ways that you can structure those agreements. You just saw the what field, the incident type. Well, over there on number 3, that's a filtering that says only wildfire. Fires get through to this application on the right. In the 2.0 core, though, I can say, hey, I only want things that are within 5 miles of this core sitting out there. And that, again, can be a virtual core. You can simulate that this core is going to cover southern Florida, and this core is going to cover northern Florida, and this one western Florida. And each one of those virtual cores will then get only the information related to that area. And then finally, event severity. Number 5, that's another new way to filter the information. So the result is those virtual cores get the right information filtered to the right people. Private sector, this is really what SABRE is all about, so I won't take long on this. Lots of sources on the left-hand side. I only want a few recipients on the right-hand side. Instead of having all those lines there, I put an XchangeCore in the middle and can get the specific information that I want to each one of those organizations. Location-based, this is another one. I've got a suspicious activity report in this particular location, and it's represented by that dot on the map over on the right-hand side. Well, you know what I can do? I can go into my GIS, find all the things represented by that little red flag that are near that dot, and provide that information back to somebody so that they know that these are the organizations that may be at risk for whatever happened during that dot. Happening right now in New Jersey, where suspicious activities, somebody is reported in this specific location, and what we end up with is the ability to see what critical infrastructure might be near that location, thus creating a more important problem. And this is the illustration of that. I can go out and I can get those dynamic layers from that specific location, provide that information, put that information out as an OGC map context document that other GISs can then discover and be able to move that information back and forth as quickly as you can move anything. And that gives a greater means to be able to deliver the kinds of orchestrated information rather than just a bunch of stuff. More of those, subscribing all the way back. So the CAD to SIMS to COP is currently implemented in the healthcare sector in the National Capital Region. Location-based static extraction really demonstrated well by NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and you saw that there. And the one that I forgot to do, I just mentioned, was the New Jersey suspicious activity reporting getting matched with the critical infrastructure near that suspicious activity report. This one's a little bit more focused on that FEMA Requester SABRE project. I mentioned this one briefly, so I'll just fly through it. The project goal is to make all this happen, adding additional components out of multi-sector organizations on the left-hand side, multiple state and local organizations on the right-hand side, while supporting not just FEMA NBEOC, but the regional private sector liaisons, and have good connectivity in with a couple of those right now, but that growth will be taking place. And every time that happens, that's exposing more status data about an incident that any of you can begin to consume. And this idea of a national footprint deployment for SABRE itself, and then regional or localized SABREs is the way that we see that, because SABRE doesn't replace the Business Emergency Operations Center. It can't. It doesn't even have staff to talk to people. What it does is support the Business Emergency Operations Center. And a couple clicks here through Checkpoint 16, where that whole process was significantly tested. Some Walmart and Target stores there, and we've got some local Rhode Island stores. Here's that, we mentioned before, that GeoJSON output from XchangeCore. Here it is in ArcGIS Online. And Boyd Gaming took a look at its Las Vegas and Gulf Coast stores, and then Macy's, Walmart, Walgreens, Sears, Target as part of the Checkpoint 16 actual common operating picture that they provided. So last month, Vigilant Guard. If you were tuned in last month for that 3-hour look into Vigilant Guard, you saw all these organizations being involved. Lots of the information passing back and forth. Just to highlight a couple, all those incidents were going to and from WebEOC. All those incidents were being depicted, and observations were being depicted on, in this case, spot-on response, but multiple applications. Oh, there's another one. Google Earth, you see the same information being shared back and forth. NOAA models, for the first time, this group came in very late. I mean, literally the Monday the exercise, 4-day exercise started, and said, look what I've been doing. And we were able to establish connectivity with them. They did ammonia plumes, chemical plumes. Here you see it on 2 different applications, and were able to do a great job of participating in the exercise. And again, hey, you just want to read it, you can pull that information out and just read it. That's right, Sabre was in here just depicting Costco, Lowe's, and whoever else that was. But here, integrated with the U.S. Geological Survey shake map, so if I'm Lowe's, I'm sitting there saying, boy, these guys up in the upper right-hand corner I ought to be really concerned about. But the folks over by the coast, perhaps, I don't have as great a concern. Update on that, the after-action report for Vigilant Guard will be available in February 2017. And I say the microphone is open. We do have a couple of minutes. And on this thing, I'm looking here. If you want to raise your hand, I'll give a shout to see whether I can notice you and open up your microphone. You raise your hand in that little attendees column by clicking on it. And Mark Bracken, did you just ask a question, and can you now talk? He's written a question, and I'd like to review or go through the other training sessions to better understand what's the address of the training where it's maintained. It's www.XchangeCore, note there's no E on the front, .org. So XchangeCore.org will get you all the training programs. And let's see. Yep, starting at the beginning. And as a matter of fact, that's the document side. The other one is if you just type into your browser YouTube and then the word XchangeCore, it will take you to our XchangeCore channel. And in that, or 20-some of these webinars that are on there, a couple of the 3-hour exercises, several different operations instruction things. But from a user standpoint, in there is a section, or whatever they call it, on California Earthquake Clearinghouse training. And there are 10 or 11, 12 different training programs that we did a year ago that you can go through. If you want to learn about spot-on response, there's one in there. You want to go through and provide a whole lot of other information of the ArcGIS Online and others. Those are all separate training sessions, usually under 30 minutes, very specific to learning how to use the information. Spot-on response is spotonresponse.com, and it's all one word. And Sabre is Saberspace, SABERSPACE.org. So actually, I probably should. Yeah, I'll type them out there. Do we have them? Nah. Yeah, this one just is the XchangeCore one. So we got XchangeCore.org. You've got Saberspace.org. spotonresponse.com, and then search for YouTube XchangeCore, and there should be a lot of information. Another question there, how does ArcGIS relate to XchangeCore? It is an application. just like every other application. It has data, and using the XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online, you can get data out of ArcGIS Online and publish it into XchangeCore, which means it can go into other applications. It can go into Google Earth. It can go into WebEOC. It can go into Spot on Response. It can go into Scout. So we can get the information out of ArcGIS Online by moving it through XchangeCore. The other way, there are 3 different ways that you can move the data from XchangeCore into ArcGIS Online. First one being KML layers, second one being GORS layers, and the third one you saw discussed here, the brand new one, and it's to be able to move GeoJSON data into ArcGIS Online to be able to do further analysis with it. And when I got to the SOR webpage, the map I got was smaller than the screen available. Correct. If you use, okay, on Sabre is a status map, and it is intended to just give you a quick look at it, at what is happening. Because the whole idea of the Sabre data is to take it and put it into the information into your own applications. Joe, since you're part of the clearinghouse, Ann can give you a login to her version of Spot on Response that does look at the Sabre data when it becomes available. So if anybody ever has any questions, I'm always available by email, and the email happens to be there, jim@exchangecore.org. And I want to thank everybody for your participation today, and all of you who have been participating throughout the year, and in particular all those people who have presented their stories of XchangeCore over the last year. Appreciate that tremendously, and hope that we continue together to grow all of our implementations in the coming year with all the new technologies that we just talked about. My best, everyone. Great holidays and a wonderful new year. Thanks, everybody.